And the thing that stands out to me the most about this matchup is the skill position players on both sides. It is absolutely stunning how much top tier talent there is. And when you talk about game script and two very good offensive lines and two quarterbacks, that I think play pretty well in big games, at least Quinn Ewers has this year. Like, I think it might be one of the more entertaining games of the year, which is something that we haven't really gotten a lot in semifinal games.
Yeah. I mean, I think we saw both of the Oregon-Washington games were great, and I think you're going to get another one here of a team that, I don't think it's going to devolve into a track meet. I think these two defenses are better and have a little bit more pride that, we're not going to get a 55-48 game. But like you said, there's so much skill position talent, and even though I think that, Texas probably has a little bit of an advantage on the lines of scrimmage, there's going to be points, but I don't think you're going to see – because I think there's like a breaking point in offensive games where it gets a little stupid. I think we can call it the Mahomes-Mayfield, Texas Tech, Oklahoma line, where it's just like, okay, but what are we doing here? I don't think this game can get to that point.
Michigan TCU kind of felt like that last year.
Yeah,
that went off the rails in the third quarter in a way that you didn't really usually see from
although there were some defensive touchdowns in that game.
There were.
So, but I think I think we will stay in the realm of very fun, very well played, because these are two really, really good defenses too. I think Washington is slightly underrated. I really am. I mean, not to put my football coach hat on, but I really do think this game will be decided at the line of scrimmage. And Washington rose to the occasion against Oregon and against Oregon again, because Oregon had been more physical than them for most of the season. And I think we were all on the same page that we felt like, well, they're going to prove that in that game. But Washington looked like a different team in those two games. They were way more physical. They tackled really well on the edges. They just played out of their minds. And I'm curious if you see that again from this Washington team that, on paper, I think Texas, they're not going to just bully them, but I think that they should win that battle on paper. And if they do, they'll win the game. But I'm curious if you see Washington rise to the occasion like they did in both of those Oregon games.
Yeah, I think when I'm looking at it from a line of scrimmage standpoint, I'm most fascinated by the Texas defensive front against the Washington offensive line, because I think that's the good on good matchup in this game. But if there's one thing I would keep an eye on, it's Texas in pass pro, because Texas has been a really good run blocking line. They have shown at times that they can give up pressure, and if Washington can generate that pressure, then I think you could make things really interesting. Especially also, I think that partially depends on also because you need more time to get these guys, to get Xavier Worthy downfield, and also how healthy is he at this point, which I think remains to be seen after suffering the injury in the Big 12 title game. As far as the general perception of this game, I kind of am with Ari just on it feels like there's more attention paid to that Alabama-Michigan game. When we were at Media Day, I was really surprised by it. Didn't seem to be as many people media-wise there as I expected and have seen in past Media Days at a semifinal. And I'm not sure if that's because most of the people are at Alabama-Michigan instead. So in that way, maybe this kind of feels like the undercard. But I agree with Ari. I think this game will be the better of the more compelling of the two on the field.
I just hope it's 24-21, late in the second quarter. We got a back and forth. We got Xavier Worthy high stepping, and Washington getting its answers. A lot of scoring in a close game, I think, would be great for the last 4-team field.
It is a fast track. We're indoors,
baby. Don't stadium.
Deep, two head coaches and two coaching staffs that are bringing deep luxury bags to this game.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be seeing some wild stuff, I think.
Yeah. Guys, I did a poor job of hosting, and I don't know that I mentioned that Kennington Smith, our Alabama beat writer, who is out in L.A. for the Rose Bowl, will be joining us later in the show to break that game down as well. So if you're here for that game, we're also going to talk about it. But how is the trash talking vibe there? Is there any back and forth? Is there anybody getting snippy? What are people missing if they're not there?
So earlier in the week, T'Vondre Sweat, one of the largest human beings that I have ever been around in my life. It's like him, Phil Lodeholt, Trey Smith. He's on the short list. It's ridiculous. These people are just built in insane ways. Jatavian Sanders is kind of that way too. Yeah. Guys that are different sort of athletes that he's not in terms of pure mass, because he's obviously not a lineman, but you've seen him run around and you're just dude, what? It's ridiculous. So anyway, they were asked about the offensive line, T'Vondre Sweat specifically, and there's that thing where you don't want to give the bulletin board material, but you can see the player smile and sort of like internally roll his eyes, if that's a thing. And I think that there's
I love when there's like the 5 to 10 second pause where they think about the thing they really want to say.
Exactly.
And then they say the opposite.
Exactly. And I think he basically said, like, that's nice that they won their award, but like, we'll see what happens. Like, and maybe he's right. I think on paper, I can see how Texas would sort of be kind of annoyed at the talk around Washington's offensive line. But the Oregon games existed. They won that game for them. They controlled those games.
Washington also handled those guys up front last year. I mean, they used to have played in the last calendar year. And Sweat, I think, had one pressure in that game. I mean, it wasn't like necessarily – it was a close game towards the end, I suppose, but it wasn't a dominant day by Texas D-line.
Yeah, and it's an offensive line that isn't known for pushing people around, but it still has only allowed Michael Penix to be sacked 10 times in 13 games, which is huge considering Michael Penix's injury history. The less hits he takes, the better. And, like I said, I not to get too, football coachy or simplicity with, turnovers are going to decide the game, but I think this game is decided on the line of scrimmage.
Well, I will say that when I was in Vegas, when I went to cover the Pac-12 championship game, I thought or had this notion that Washington would get pushed around. And you mentioned this earlier.
I thought it
and I remember leaving the stadium thinking, a month is a long time for your brain to forget, but don't forget how tough Washington played this game, because Texas has great lines. They've got a lot of big-time athletes on there, but Washington physically is very underrated, I think. And I think they'll be able to hold their own quite well. And if they can run the ball and protect their quarterback, I question whether or not Texas will be able to keep up in a shootout. That said, Washington has also allowed 30 plays this year of 30 yards or more. So, I'm trying to let go of that USC game a little bit, while also kind of reminding myself of the last time they played. I was there, I saw it, and they were awesome. I think I'm legitimately going into this game thinking that either of them could win. No surprising results.
Well, and you're not really hearing people talk about the other O-line, D-line battle in this game. And that could be a problem for Texas. I mean, it could. I think Texas, Kyle Flood's done a terrific job of building up Texas's offensive line and taking some young players and getting them ready to play at a really high level this year. But I do think that Washington staff is going to be able to, provide some pressure here. And if Texas is not getting big rushing gains on first and second down, if we're putting Quinn Ewers in some third and long situations, I think that's a little bit scary for Texas, because I think that as well as he played against Oklahoma State, we didn't really see, that game got away pretty quickly. We didn't see a lot of pressure downs where he had to go do something on third and long with the deficit on the line there. I mean, that game, they blew that one out. So I'm curious to see if Texas offensive line, which isn't really getting talked about as much this week, are they ready for the challenge on this one?
Do you think that we need to have the Quinn Ewers talk? Where is he? What is he capable of? Is this a chance to superstardom, coming back, all this stuff? Is there a bigger Quinn Ewers discussion that needs to be had?
I don't think so, honestly. You know why? Because I think every time it's been a big game, he showed up. For the Alabama game, he showed up. Last year against Oklahoma, he showed up. Obviously, this year against Oklahoma, he had a couple picks early, but I think he completed, it was 31 of 37 that day. He is quietly, if you look at his play in the last really half of this season, and even the last couple games before he got injured, he has become scary accurate. His completion percentage numbers are running at a career high right now. He takes pretty decent care of the ball, certainly much more than he did as a freshman. And I think as long as they protect him, it's fine. I think it's as what Max said, is if pressure becomes an issue, I think that's when it can get sticky. And that goes for any quarterback. I think that goes on the flip side to Penix. I think Texas is one shot to slow this passing game now, is they've got to get Penix off his spot. I think the same could be said for Quinn. And I think there is still sometimes some inconsistency for Quinn. But also, I do wonder: is there? To me, the discussion is he playing for right now, whether he's going to go pro or not? Like, if he comes in and has a great game on Monday night, and then they win, and he goes and has a great game in the title game, does he end up becoming a first round pick? Or if he doesn't, is he coming back?
I think
2024?
Everything you just said is true. I agree with you 100%. But don't you get the feeling that the general public doubts him or doesn't view him as a superstar or thinks he's not that good or overrated? And I don't know if part of that was because of his rating and what he did in high
He's
school.
definitely one of the best quarterbacks Ohio State has produced in the past few years.
And let's get into the Cotton Bowl. Okay.
No, I think it's not that a lot of people don't think he's good, but he's definitely not viewed on the same level as like Caleb, Penix, Nix.
Not even
nobody
close.
views him that way. And I don't have the numbers in front of me. I would say that that's probably fair based on the numbers, but I also watched the Alabama game. I think when he has been needed, I think it looked pretty easy in the Big 12 championship game for him, but there's something to be said for what he had, like 400 yards the first half.
Yeah.
I mean, Oklahoma State was hopeless in covering him, and I don't know that you win the Heisman Trophy throwing to Jatavian Sanders uncovered 15 yards downfield 8 times. But, like, there's something to be said for that. And I say all the time, if you've got a quarterback in this sport that when you give him a clean pocket and you give him an open receiver, he hits him 90% of the time, you're way ahead of the game. And I think Quinn definitely does that. Like, that's a thing that not a lot of teams have.
And that was the praise you heard from Sark after the Big 12 title game. It's like he threw to the open guy.
Mm-hmm.
And when he had to go to that second read, he didn't panic. And I think I'm curious to see the skill matchup because we know, and you saw it really glaringly in these last 2 games Texas has played. Texas has got NFL caliber wideouts and tight end. And I think that their guys are going to get open on Washington. I'd be surprised. I mean, if Washington is just shutting these guys down and they're getting coverage sacks and stuff like that, that'd be extremely impressive. But I think that Texas is going to be able to get guys open. They're going to be able to scheme it up. And these guys, I think, can win one-on-one. So it's going to be a question of can he get his timing right and play with good rhythm because you've seen that's the huge thing. Sam, you've watched a lot of Texas games this year. I mean, when they've looked a little sloppy, when they've looked a little off, it kind of feels like the offensive rhythm is just not there.
I wonder how much of it too is, and this speaks to Ari's larger question, is Quinn's success a byproduct of the scheme and then now the uber talent around him with Worthy and A.D. Mitchell and JT Sanders and Jordan Whittington? Because last year, obviously, in his redshirt freshman season, it was a lot more up and down. They didn't have, JT Sanders wasn't what JT Sanders is now. They didn't have A.D. Mitchell. They didn't, Sark obviously was, still the same play caller, but I think to me, it's a little bit of both. To me, he has definitely benefited from the weapons around him in a big way and taken advantage of that. But at the same time, I think he's grown tremendously. And I no, he's not to me Caleb or Drake May right now. But I do think he's a really good college quarterback, and I think he's on the way to being a great one if he continues on his current trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with all that. All right, well, Dave and I picked this game already. I'm going to put Max and Sam on the spot here. What's your gut telling you if you had to pick right now? I know it's close. I know it's going to be difficult, but is there a side that you found yourself liking through your reporting and just getting closer to the game?
I think I'm taking Texas. I think it's a mid to high 30s game.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like 38, 34-ish. I do think it's a back and forth. And then eventually I think the teams will settle in. And I just keep coming back to the fact that all season long, very few teams have run the ball in Texas. And Washington doesn't need to run the ball a ton because it's not what they do. But you do have to have some presence. And I just, between T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, and even the guys that we don't mention as much, the Barron Sorrells, the Anthony Hill Jr.'s, the Ethan Burks off the edge, I think that front is going to end up winning that battle. And I think that's going to end up being the difference. When
we did the Max, Sam, Chris, and Nicole, we picked this game. Is that canon? Do I have to stick to what I picked in that?
No. This is final thoughts.
Yeah.
I kind of think Washington's gonna pull this off, and I think that it wasn't. First half of that game last year in San Antonio wasn't that close. Washington was a lot better. I think Texas has improved a lot. I think Washington's improved a lot. I kind of think if Texas loses this game, it's going to be self-inflicted stuff. And I think that's why I think you circle Ewers as really the X factor of this one, because he's just got to play his best football, and it's easy to be encouraged by what you just saw from him. But we've seen ups and downs too over these 2 years. So I kind of lean Washington kind of pulling this out by like 3. But if it goes completely in the other direction and Texas, wins by double digits, that would make sense too. I'm a little torn.